Welcome to Upcycle Your Life. Upcycle means to process something so as to make it better than what it originally was. Hello, I am Lee Smith. I am the speaker confidence coach and certified NLP master practitioner with Upcycle Coaching and your host of Upcycle Your Life. And it's my intention to take you through a process. It may be a story, it may be an idea, it may be an actual thought process, a series of questions that help you and me be better than who we were at the original time that we started the episode. Today, I am super excited to have a wonderful guest with us, Dr. Unati Jain. She is a parent-teen coach, and let me just share her bio with you. She's a certified youth behavior change expert and studies behavioral patterns. She strongly believes that to build strong young adults, parents must shift from control to connection. And that is a real challenge, isn't it? That's going to be a fun topic today. She is a TEDx speaker and shares her insights on her talk, How to Move from Control to Connection. She is the author of A Parent-Teen Journey, which is a wealth of anecdotes and strategies with guidance on how to move from control to connection with your child. She is a proponent of self-exploration and nurturing connection. And all through her talks and workshops, she identifies the various components of control which hinder the child's growth mindset and limit their potential. Please give a warm welcome to Dr. Unati Jain. Thank you so much for being with us here today.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you. I'm very, very grateful to come on the show and very grateful to be here to our audience and to you. Thank you.
Wonderful. And are you a parent of a teen presently yourself?
My son is 19 years old.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Looking forward to hearing a little bit about that journey. I have two children myself. My stepson from my husband's previous marriage, he was 5 when we got married. And then 2 years later, we had our daughter together. So as my son was going through his teenage years and then coming into his 20s, my daughter was coming to her teenage years. So I was like, okay, got done with one. Oh, wait, get myself ready. I got to get ready for the next round. And then, of course, raising a boy and raising a girl are two entirely
completely different.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing on how that control works, and definitely the connection part too. Where my son, he's very to himself, which I know is typical of boy behavior, but very to himself. So the connection was definitely challenging. Whereas my daughter was very, well, she still is very open, and so I feel like we have very deep connections. And again, looking forward to hearing your insights. And this is a wonderful time to be talking about mental health as well, and working from the parent perspective and working with children. All these challenges that we have, especially coming out of the pandemic where we were in that forced lockdown, staying in our homes. And now we're, instead of going to work and going to school, we're in this shared space and this concentrated time. And there's such an impact on the family dynamic, the relationships, us as individuals, ourselves. And, as we're 2 years coming out of it, I'm really curious to know, what are some of the common mental health issues that you see in young people today?
Thank you, Lee, for that question. So I think with the pandemic, it's given us a lot of different issues, which were prevalent earlier too, but now they're more exacerbated. So it's also this generation, which we're talking about, people from 12 to 26 years of age, typically referred to as Generation Z. These are people who are completely different than the earlier generation, which was the millennials.
Right.
So they come with a different set of problems. And the most common issues, especially after the pandemic, I've seen are anxiety, very, very high social anxiety, as well as anxiety in anything that they do. They have a lot of body image issues. They doubt themselves a lot. And they live in an instant gratification world because they're so used to Amazon and stuff like that, that when they don't get something that they want immediately, their anxiety kicks.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So these are some very standard issues which we encounter in most of these children that I work with.
Fantastic.
And there are other key differences which we will talk about later. But as far as mental health is concerned, I think these are some of the primary issues that we encounter.
Yeah. And then what is your best advice for parents in helping their teens through that journey?
I think we need to continue to talk about, as I mentioned in my TED talk, we need to move from control to connection. Now, how do we move from control to connection? And if for everybody here listening to this, I'd urge everybody to listen to my TEDx talk, because I think there are some great insights in there of moving from control to connection. I've listed 5 cornerstones. So one, I think as parents, and call it a generational gap, or call it culture, or call it the way we were raised, I feel like there is a lack of conversations around some topics which we as parents feel should not be talked about, or should be too. So the first cornerstone that I mentioned in my talk is to move from control to connection, is really creating space for healthy conversations. And those healthy conversations could look like things which are very uncomfortable emotions. Things like things which we don't want to talk about, excuse me, as parents. And creating that space for those conversations can deepen the connection. And when we come from a place where we're not looking to turn the conversation into the path that we wanted to go as parents, and we allow them to speak their mind and what they feel, and that could be right or wrong according to us, but it really is a viewpoint, right? When we create that space, that's our first step towards creating a connection, because then we tell our kids, here is a safe space, come talk to me. I will not judge you. I will not try and steer you in a particular direction. I will create space for listening. You are as important as anybody else. And I'm going to drop everything that I have right now, and I'm going to give you the attention that you need. And that creates a safety net. So right there, you've built a very deep connection, because now the child feels heard. And what is it that typically each of us is looking for? Is really to be heard.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And when you think about it, everybody is so eager to speak and put their mind forward that they don't spend the time to listen. So when we create that space, we tell our kids, be you. I'm not just. I'm here to listen. So that's the first step to forming a deep connection. Then there is, teenage is an age where there are a lot of arguments, not because they are trying to argue with you or question your authority, but really because they're trying to prove to themselves that they have a voice. And one of the ways that we parents can give that connection to our child is really by giving them the power to have a choice. When we give them choices, we give them power. When we give them power, they will not defy us, because they will feel in control. Because one of their major problems is really they don't feel in control.
Right.
Right? And how many times as parents do we turn around and say, I don't know, and it's very cultural. I'm talking about my culture, at least back in our culture, we say things like, have you seen the neighbor's child? He is doing so well. What is wrong with you? Why can't you perform academically? Yeah. And that automatically switches off a child, because the child in his brain thinks, oh my God, I'm already a failure. I'm never going to make her happy. So you know what? Let me stop trying.
Right.
So that comparison and judgment kind of limits the child's potential. And they give up even before they try. Why? Because one of the major things that is a goal of a child's life is to please a parent.
Right.
And when they're not able to do that, they're like, you know what? I'm not even going to try.
Exactly.
And the last 2 things that I mentioned in my TED talk again is the importance of respect and trust. Because at 12 years of age, like between when a child is a tween or a teen, at that point, they're developing a personality and they're growing into this new individual, which we are not used to. So when we try and address them like a child, they feel disrespected. When they feel disrespected, they in turn disrespect. So it's not like a parent is disrespecting a child, but it's really treating them as an adult, as an individual, and placing them in that respect. So that's another one. And the last one that I mentioned is the trust. I think sometimes we fail to trust our children. Because we've put teenagers in a box. I'm not saying teenagers are not who they are, but what I am saying is that it's very important to build that trust, continuously build that trust, and show up for our children when we want them to, when they want us to show. And when we build that trust, you would have cut down half of the issues that you face as a child, as a parent.
Yes, yes. Well, you're speaking so much to me about my brain. Part of me is reflecting back on how I was as a teenager and thinking about my relationship with my parents, and then because there was that culture difference, and very much like you were mentioning, my mom was really great at the comparison game. Why can't you be like so and so? And spot on. I quit trying. Initially, I loved learning and I loved striving, and I threw my hands up at it. Why bother? Nothing is going to make her happy. Even if I make straight A's, nothing is going to make her happy. So why bother? And then how I turned that experience on its head when I became a parent and my kids entered their teenage years. And what I stressed to them was, yes, I want them to get the best grades possible, but I just want their best effort. So that if their best grades are B's and high C's, if they put their best effort, I was going to be pleased with that. I wasn't expecting them to get into Ivy League schools or anything like that. I just want your best effort. And then also what was important to me with them was I wanted to express that safe space. This is your home. This is your refuge from the rest of the world. So anything that's on your mind or on your heart, I want you to know that you can come and talk to your dad. You can come and talk to me. And yes, you're going to get different perspectives from dad and from me, but I want you to feel safe to at least one of us. If you can come and talk with at least one of us, we want you to, and if you talk with both of us, that's great. We want this safe space for you. And I must have either did something wrong or I must have really done something right, Dr. Yanati, because when my biggest inner conversation with myself as a parent was, what is the rebellious phase going to turn out as? How will they express this? And for my stepson, essentially, it was him just shutting himself in his room. That was it. And he slacked on his chores. Would I call that rebellious? No, I just call that normal teenage behavior. And same thing with my daughter. I thought, okay, oh great. Okay, what is her rebellious thing going to be? And no, she didn't have it either. She was very open and communicative with her feelings. And something that helped me, so I want to share this, and you can tell me if I'm on track with this or not. Something that was really important to me when my kids did come and communicate is in the sense of helping them feel like they were heard, I would say, okay, can we pause right here for a moment? Let me share with you what I think I'm hearing, and you tell me if I'm on track or not. And I would say, this is what I'm hearing you say. Do I have that right? Or could you explain it, a little differently? And that way, I really wanted to validate. And you're right. It didn't matter if I agreed or if I liked it or didn't like it. It was like, they're coming and sharing with me. All I'm doing is just being present and listening to.
And there's another thing that I tell parents in this case, Lee, is when they come up to you, there's another thing that you can ask them is, really, are you looking for advice? Are you looking to vent? Are you just looking to speak? So you have that clarity, because then you're not wondering as a parent, what am I supposed to do with this information? Right. And then they're not thinking as children, okay, I didn't come for advice. Why is my mom or dad giving me advice? Or I just came for advice. Why is it that they're not listening? Right. So I think it's very important to gain clarity as a parent on that note. That definitely helps.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. What are some, I guess, sometimes as parents, we can get caught up in, oh, of course, I want my kids to make the best grades because I want the best future for them. And what is something maybe in the way that we communicate as parents, or how do you help parents relinquish that control of, I just want you to get good grades? That part, how do you help them with that?
So I think that's one of the reasons that we have so many issues, right? Because parents are constantly on. So it's almost like they tie their child's love to grades, because that's what you're communicating to the child. You're telling the child that if you don't get good grades, that you're not loved, you're not accepted. Right? Because what's going to happen? So let's say a parent tells a child, I want you to get good grades, and the child does not get good grades. In the child's head, they're thinking, okay, I didn't get good grades. My parents are not going to love me. They're going to yell at me, and they're going to judge me that I did not study or I did not do a specific thing, which means he or she has already formed that notion that I will not be accepted at home because my grades are not. So when you're telling your child just get good grades, you're focusing on the wrong thing. If you were to tell the child, do your best, the grades will automatically come. The child will strive a lot more to get you the grades that you want. So you're focusing on the action rather than the process. You're focusing on the outcome. If you focus on the process, then the child will focus on the process and they will do a lot better because they won't be attached to the outcome. Right? Right now, when you say get good grades, they're so in their head that they're constantly thinking, if I don't get good grades, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? That they mess up their exam. Versus if you were to say, just focus on the process, it doesn't matter what grades you get, they'll probably get straight A's. Yeah. Because they're so focused on getting the knowledge.
I love that. I love that. Yeah. Communicating, hey, I just want your best efforts. Just give me that. You know, if you get lazy and now you're getting C's and D's, that's not acceptable. But if you're giving,
correct,
because not everybody grasps learning every concept. So some subjects we may struggle with. And
everybody has a different learning style also.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, fantastic. And I'm going to back up a little bit to take this a little bit of a segue to get a little bit of your story, if I may, of how did this parent-teen journey become important to you, that this has become what you do with your life's work. Could you share a little bit of that with us?
Sure. So my inspiration was my child. As a single mother in an alien country, I was to raise him with all Indian values as well as American values. And I needed to understand him a lot better than I did. So at 12, when he turned 12, when he was a teen, I decided that I'm going to study behavior so that I could be the best parent that I should be for my child. And I started studying behaviors for this generation. I did my PhD, I did my doctorate. And as I was doing it, I realized 1 year into it, 1 year into it, I started attracting a lot of youth who needed coaching. Who was struggling with a growth mindset. And we can talk about what really is coaching to the world, but was struggling with a growth mindset. And they were stuck in their limiting belief systems and they were coming in their own way. And I helped coach all of these kids. And the more I coached, the more I received. And that's when I realized, okay, so this is it. This is my purpose. This is what I'm supposed to do. This is what the universe is telling me. So I need to pay heed to it. And then it took me 4 years to finish my doctorate, of course. And then when I finished my doctorate, I said, okay, this is my path. This is my new path that I want to take.
Fantastic. Because so and then in your work, do you work mostly with teens then? I think you mentioned an age demographic between 12 and 26. And do you work with the parents as well, or do you just focus your work on working with the teens?
So no, my ideal clients are 12 to 26. I work absolutely with parents as well as with teens. And I also work with anybody who's struggling with creating a growth mindset.
Mm.
And though my ideal candidate is 12 to 26, but I do have a lot of millennials. I do have a lot of, because I studied behaviors for Generation Z and millennials. Millennials are the parents. So it's the parents as well as the teens and in the middle. So yes, both.
Almost in a sense of growing up together, right? We're growing up as parents.
It is, right? It's an evolution. It's a journey. I think parent is equally evolving with the child.
Definitely.
I think like my child taught me a lot when he was growing up.
Yeah.
And I am who I am today because I had a lot of experiences with him.
Yes.
He taught me equal amount as much as I taught.
Yes, I can definitely say that in regards to my daughter too, and what I gained from her. And what would you like to share with our audience if they haven't heard of life coaching before? How would you describe it to them?
So life coaching is really about creating a growth mindset, especially with teens, because teens are in a very formative age. Between 12 to 18 is when they're really forming their brains. And as you probably know, that the brain is fully developed at 25. So really you can mold the brain to the way you want it. So coaching is completely different than therapy. Therapy takes you backwards and deals with your trauma and deals with your triggers and identifies what is happening in your system and your brain. Whereas coaching is all about moving. So anybody who struggles, if your children struggle with procrastination, self-doubt, self-advocacy, fear of failure, low self-esteem, confidence, these are all the things that coaching supports you with. Because once you have tackled all of these things during these years, when they turn out to be 25, 26, or they step into the real world, they've already acquired all of these traits.
Yeah.
And they moved into the growth mindset. So at that point in time, their attitude is already shaped and they won't have a problem in the transition. So I think coaching is an absolute must for every human, as a matter of fact. I'm a big proponent of coaching. I have a coach myself. And I think everybody needs a coach. Why? Because it takes you away from your own mindset and makes you look at things completely differently. It's all about self-exploration.
Definitely. And I've journeyed with coaches myself for various aspects. Definitely having a mindset coach, and then because I am running a business, having that business coach and the various aspects, and even enhancing my speaking to develop those skills, having a speaker coach that
yes,
I work.
I mean, you are a speaker coach, right? I mean, Lee is a beautiful speaker coach. I mean, she's amazing. So just because coaches tell you what you don't know, what your self-limiting beliefs are, how are you coming in your own way? So when you work with Lee as a speaker coach, there are tons of things that I may not realize as a speaker. Whereas because she's trained professionally, she can bring it out of me. So I think everybody needs a coach.
Right. Yeah. Being able to see those blind spots. That's what I like. Yes. Blind spot. What am I missing? What am I not seeing that I need to get done so that I can get the results that I want? Fantastic. What do you would you be willing to share, say, an anecdote about how you helped a client? Maybe it's a favorite story or testimonial of yours, how you helped a client with deepening the connection in their parent-teen journey.
Yeah, I think I have so many of them. But let's pick up one, which is my favorite one. So I had a teen who came to me at 15, at 15. She was a girl. She is a girl. She's from Jersey, and her parents came to me all through word of mouth. This was about a couple of years ago. And they came to me and they said, look, you're our last resort. Our child is going through severe issues. She struggles with focus. She has social anxiety. She has a difficult time creating and following goals. We feel like she's in depression. She suffers with severe anxiety. And what can you do to help? We're very close to putting her on antidepressants. And I said, look, give me some time. Just give me 6 months. And it was quite an ordeal to kind of prevent the parents from going through that route of antidepressants. And the child was completely closed off to the parent. And again, that was because of the 5 cornerstones that I speak about in my TED Talk. It was all because of that. And then I worked with this child she was back on her feet 3 months into the journey. And then I had a lot of sessions with the parents, that I had joint sessions with parents and the child, all about. And then it took me about a year. And now they have a most beautiful relationship. And it's such a joy. As a matter of fact, I'm just going, and they're not my clients anymore because they've moved on. And that's another thing. Life coaching is not about, it's a very finite period that you need life coaching for.
Right.
So they've moved on, and it's such a joy. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to see them next week to Jersey and just spend some time with them. They invited me and they said, why don't you come and spend a weekend with us? And it's been 2 years. So yeah, so that's one of my favorite anecdotes. And I get so many of these kids who are 21 to 23, people who are getting out of college, stepping into the career, and they don't know how to make that transition. So yeah, I can go on and on with all my stories. It's such a joy.
Oh, that's fantastic. Fantastic. I love that this is your passion and it's fulfilling your purpose, because it is clearly, without a doubt, a definite need in the world. And I think no better time than the present with all the struggles that we have. Like we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, that there's such a high level of anxiety as when we think on the mental health issues, and then living in this world where we have so much technology and it gets in the way of connecting. And yet that doesn't stop parents from wanting to control, and it doesn't stop teenagers from wanting to feel out that level of control for themselves and the conflict.
I mean, even if you look at the parents, right, it's a very big struggle for them to see their child addicted to social media, constantly on their phone, and they're unable to do anything about it. So they need to feel that control. Yes. So when a coach comes into that relationship, they can actually look at it from 5 feet above and say, all right, if you were to stop doing this and do it in this way, then there is a probability that you will be able to reduce or kill the friction and still get what you want.
Exactly. That was definitely an interesting part of my journey, because the smartphone was coming into the world as my daughter was entering the teenage years. And I'm like, I know how to moderate the television watching. How do I moderate the being on social media and all the things that come with it? It's a whole different play of influence compared to television shows and things like that. Very, very interesting. And I love that you bring such positivity, that you have this framework for helping parents with your 5 cornerstones to release the control, deepen the connection. And it's a beautiful thing. I feel super grateful for the things that I learned through my self-education as well on parenting and that positive communication, working with my kids, that to this day, even though they're 28 and in almost 21, that we do still have a close-knit relationship. And it just warms my heart, and I feel so grateful. And one last thing that I wanted to touch on, because I think it's important too, and I'd love to hear your insight. This concept of the instant gratification. I first heard those 2 words in my early 20s, and I remember thinking, well, what is instant gratification? It's like, oh, wanting it right now versus delayed gratification. And then hearing about the marshmallow test, which I'm sure you've heard in your learnings as well. And for parents who've never heard of it, don't worry about it, or you can go Google it. It's a fascinating piece of research that teaches us this patience and waiting instead of the instantaneous. In this madness of today's world with, yes, it's not just teenagers, it's everybody they wanting instant gratification. What is your one piece of advice or one action piece that a parent can put into play to help take that in a positive direction?
I'm going to say my favorite statement. You can change the input. You can change the output by changing the input.
Mm,
What do I mean by that? We're living in an Amazon world. It's an instant gratification world where these children are so used to having everything on their fingertips that they don't know what it is to step back. And on top of that, when a parent is so worried about the anxiety that a child is facing, they are giving them even more resources because they don't know how to kill that anxiety in the child. So their form of love is, let me provide a little more. Let me give you what you want at the time that you want.
mm,
What does that do? It creates severe entitlement issues.
yes.
And I'm big on social media, and I post a video every day, and I post a lot on entitlement and gratitude. Entitlement, teens don't come entitled. We make them.
Right.
So as parents, we are the only people who can change this instant gratification by saying a no. One big thing that every parent needs to practice is to say a no. You won't believe it. All the children who come to me today, I had a client who was 28 years old. And he is telling me on my face that I'm entitled because my mother has never said no to me.
Wow.
And this is one of my biggest problems. So to get rid of the instant gratification and to ensure that your child does not go through the misery of not getting whatever he wants in this real world, that's all parents, let's practice to say no as much as we can. And of course, depending on your discretion and depending on how important the thing is or what you feel the child should get or not get.
Exactly.
But let's not put our insecurities on our children.
I so agree with that. Thank you so much. Thank you for all of these wonderful sharings, Dr. Nadi, and the stories and your expertise and the little pieces of takeaways that we can have so we can make a difference with the output when we are mindful of the input. I love that. And yes, practice saying no more. And that was another thing I made clear with my daughter in raising her. I am going to say no because I love you. There are things that I can see that you can't see. And that's why, but we can have a discussion about this. And she was so, thankfully, she was so good about it. She never looked at me and said, "You're a mean mommy." She understood. And then there were times that she validly challenged me. I just want to understand, why are you saying no, Mom? And then sometimes I would realize I'm not entirely sure why I'm saying no. And then we could have that conversation about it. And in the end, I could tell her, okay, this is why I'm still saying no, because of A, B, and C. But she understood it. And it wasn't because I'm your mother and I said so. And
I think thank you for bringing that point.
Yes.
We forgot that point. When you say a no, but you give a valid reason of why you're saying a no, you will not get that so-called defiance back.
Yeah.
You may get a sad face, you may get a little bit of moping and closed doors, but you won't get defiance.
Exactly. This has been so wonderful. Thank you so much for being here with us. And my friends watching and listening, I hope you received some value from this. Dr. Nadia Jain is just a beautiful human being with so much to give in this parent-teen journey. I invite you to check out her TED Talk, and I will provide those details. And I look forward to being with you again in our next episode of Upcycle Your Life. In the meantime, be more, do more, and no excuses, only excellence. Cheers.
Thank you.